Support and testing, we haven't got a lot of changes here to talk about. We're not making radical changes to the plant. Of course, it is the bottom level of the pyramid, so we don't want to make radical changes here. We're very thoughtful of the changes we make. We mentioned Anthony, he's one of the recent changes, and it's quite interesting how we go about selecting developers. The sort of work that we're doing here, the sort of work, for example, that Jerry's doing in the database, isn't something where a lot of people are doing that in Christchurch. You know, so to get new developers is a really hard task for us. And of course, last time we did a set of adverts, we didn't get very many good candidates, and then we're going down the list and we saw Anthony's name, so we were pretty lucky there too. So the group covers the whole gambit. We do product planning in conjunction with John, design, development, normal things you expect a plant to do. Qualification and testing of the product, obviously, is also in this group. And recently we've got Janet joining us with documentation and education. So sorry that went off. Okay, so in terms of the changes in support and testing, these aren't very radical either, but we are trying to put a bit more emphasis on testing. Most of the testing we do over the years has taken all the low-hanging fruit, so what we're now looking at are the really esoteric things that people do with the system, and so we need more experienced people to do that, some of that testing. So one of the changes we've made is we've moved one of the one of the support guys into a more permanent testing role, and this is Tom Holmes. You'll probably have all seen him on contacts over the last few years. Done a sterling job in the support role. He's actually moving to like a level 2 support. The support people can still talk to him around any issues you might have, but really he's focusing on that next level of testing, that really complex level of testing that we need to do. And he's often the go-to guy for developers like Jerry, for example, who has a really tricky problem, needs to reproduce it in a convincing way so that he knows he's fixed the bug, and Tom's the guy we use for that. So he's changing into that role. So that's it. In terms of changes, we haven't made radical ones, and they're the ones that we have made. So these are in terms of the qualification and testing, this is an area we're going to focus on with Tom moving in there. Qualification of new releases and hot fixes is what we've always been doing. We get a new release, we go through a whole qualification process, and the same for hot fixes. Overnight, we run a suite of integration tests on all the releases that are supported. For individuals, individual fixes that developers come up with, they've got their own testing they do. They can hook into the integration testing and run all of those if they want to, or a subset of those against their particular fix. And the only other tool we have in the toolbox is a thing called ATCG, which is a record and replay mechanism we use. And it's based on method tracking, which is a facility that came out in 7.0? 6.3, was it? Oh, it's been around for a while. Okay, so that's really all I had to say about the plant and the changes in that area. I'm going to talk about NFSs now and what we've done. We started NFSs started NFS reviews back in November 2015. And I'd like to say that we started it just for you, but there was a bit of us in it as well, because what I wanted to do was get all the developers together in a room and talk almost randomly about the product. You know, get new ideas about how we do it and try and understand what customers' pain points were. And it may not be that the actual NFS was what we did, but it was the discussion that was really valuable to us. And in reviewing the NFS, obviously, we hopefully add value to you as well. So the attendees are the entire development team. It may well be that an NFS is something just in the database area, so really it mainly only affects Jerry, but everybody else is there and can add their tuppence worth, as it were, in the discussion. And obviously John Ashcroft is there. He's the arbiter. In case we all disagree, he's the man who makes the final call. The review obviously has some criteria. relevance to the overall product direction. There's no point in us picking random NFSs. They've got to come together into the product. The number of customers who benefit. Obviously, customers do put NFSs in from time to time that really are only going to benefit them. So we look for ones that have many users. The level of risk. Obviously, the product. One of our things about the database is its reliability, its stability. We don't want to put that at risk. So the level of risk is quite an important factor. And of course the cost. If we pick an NFS that's going to take many man-months to deliver, we can't do the others. So we have to be very careful about the cost of each NFS. So what has happened is this. Back in 2014, we were getting 50 odd NFSs a year. Once we started looking at them, we didn't tell people to start with, and in fact we made rapid progress going back through the backlog of NFSs. But of course, as we started giving answers back, doing the NFSs, people realised that that was now a process that was alive and working. And so in 2016, we got 218. So we're probably going to need to modify this a little bit. We're probably going to have to think about how we're going to handle this sort of number. And it was interesting, Kerry, I think, had to leave early, but as he was walking out, he said, I've got a number of NFSs I'm going to put in, and we're going, yep, okay, some more. So we're going to have to think about how we're going to process this number. What's happened with those NFSs, in the various meetings we've had 15 of them so far, we've reviewed nearly 250 NFSs. Of that, we've approved 94, and of that 94, we've already done about 60 of them. We've rejected 41. I have a very nice, polite message that I send out saying, terribly sorry. We're really interested in all your NFSs, but this particular one doesn't really meet the criteria. I've put really this is sort of opening the box here. I've put down all of the things that we categorise NFSs in and what state they're in. Some you'll notice at the bottom, we'll actually look at it and think, actually, is this an NFS or is this actually a bug? And so a few we changed to bugs. One we managed to push onto JADE as a documentation fault. That was a good one. That was a win for us. On hold is the one that's probably the most difficult to explain. On hold really means we don't feel we're in a situation to make a decision about that. Now that may be because of other changes that we're thinking about. It may be that the cost element is so big we want to give it some more thought. So there are a few in that on hold section. We have plenty under investigation. As you can imagine, this is a complex product, so we don't make decisions to do changes lightly. So there's a lot of investigation needs to go in. There's quite a few in that category. Withdrawn and split. What often happens, Callum here did it once. I think you put 15 on one NFS, so we can't handle them multiple, so we have to split them up. So there's some that fit into that category. Roadmap, these are ones that we go, yeah, we're going to do, but they're really big. We've got to think which release we're going to do them in and how we're going to actually resource them. We mentioned, I think, at the TOI that we're going to do a UX review, which is not just the GUI layer, but also the workflow aspect of the IDE. And so there's a number of those that we're pulling together for that review. We found some that were already implemented, which is a bit embarrassing. And so that's really the stats for NFSs. I would encourage all of you to put NFSs in. I noticed in the survey, which is another thing I'm going to discuss in a minute, that on the open question that said, what would you like in the product, a lot of people didn't answer that question, which I thought was a little strange. I thought you all had ideas about where the product should go. So, no, please put them in. And even if you answer that question, I would encourage you to take what you put in there, answer, and make it into an NFS, because one or two of them were a bit vague. I couldn't quite figure out what you were after. Okay, so that's NFSs. The customer survey. So, go for your life, Bron. Yeah. Well, we do it about monthly, but then now as the backlog's building up, we're sort of going every 2 weeks at the moment. Yeah, that's quite key to the process. But it's interesting. One of the things that I had one of the developers say to me the other day is that maybe we should do a little bit more research on the NFSs before they come to the meeting, and we can make the meeting more productive, because we need to get through more. So that's one of the things we might look at. Yes, somebody asked that question earlier. We talked about that at the TOI, having it more public, and perhaps having, even some way of people saying, I haven't put an NFS in, but I do like that one. That type of process we have been thinking about. We haven't actually actively done anything yet. Oh, okay. Sometimes the answer is pretty straightforward. Can I have this in the editor? And the answer is no. Sometimes we'll go back and we say, no, sorry. Sometimes we'll go back and we'll say, the answer is no, we're not going to do this to the product because we feel there's this element in the product that can do what you need. So sometimes the answer is more fuller. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I've had it where we've gone back and said no to an NFS, and then it's come back and it's very similarly worded to the first one, but it gives a bit more detail or something. Yeah, they get assigned to a developer, and then the developer goes through and does an investigation. It might well be, we want to know how long it would take, so there's a cost element to that. It might be, is it practical, and what else would it impact? So what's the risk level? Oh yes, a lot. While they're still NFSs, we might engage in a dialogue. So we might say, why have you said this? You've used a phrase that we don't fully understand, and so there's often that dialogue goes on as well. I think you can only view ones you've put in.
That's a question I took earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's. I've never seen an NFS that's had information in it that a customer might not want shared. I've never seen anything that relates to one of their customers that they might think is controversial or anything like that. So I can't see any sharing of IP that might cause that not to happen. Oh, right, yes. Right. Because that's the thing, you see. When I'm on pass this, I'm on as me, so I don't know what an end user would see. So they might actually, if they did an advanced search and picked and just said open an NFSs, you might be able to see them all.
But we do want to look at how we're managing.
How we might do it, yeah. Because they wouldn't be able to add a comment what we'd really want that to happen as well. Okay, so any more questions on NFSs before?
So does it improve our not being protected? Describe how we can use the big structure. So
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the same for your customers. If a customer says, can you change the product like this, rather than saying what they want to do, it's really what you want to do that's important. Yeah. Yeah. So, and more detail is always helpful. And, you know, an example of why you would use it or how you would use it. Yeah. If that's possible. And in fact, the one thing I suppose I haven't mentioned, I assume you'd all sort of figure that out. We work from the latest going back. You know, so the last one that came in will be the first one we'll review at the next meeting. And generally we do it in sequential order unless someone's... Well, it's funny actually, I think we had a customer in the UK who was second guessing when our meetings were, and we had a period we were doing it like the first Tuesday in the month. And on the first Monday of the month, this sort of like chunk of NFSs would appear, but we're not quite so regular now. Yeah, so occasionally we do jump about a bit. You know, like if we've done 3 or 4 for one person, we might go, oh, let's pick somebody else. So there's a bit of informality in the meeting, but that's basically what happens.